As a follow-up on my previous video where I show how to localize a .NET MAUI Blazor or a regular Blazor app, I got a lot of questions like how do I switch the language inside of my app dynamically, independent of the operating system. So let's see how to do that in this video. Now, typically I start my videos with a file new .NET MAUI application so that you're not distracted with any kinds of things that are magically somehow here in this sample. For this case, there is going to be some things that are magically going to be in here. So here you can see the application and it doesn't really look like much. But if you want to know how this is all put together, go check out that other video on how to localize your .NET MAUI Blazor app. Watch that first, come back here. But if you already think you know at least how that all works, then stick with this video, but I would highly recommend to watch the other one first so you know what has been going on before this one. So you don't see much here on the outside, but here especially this hello world is localized, right? So my Windows is now set to English, so it will show hello world, but if my Windows would now switch to Dutch, it would show hello wereld, which is the Dutch translation for that. So quickly to give you a quick overview, to do that we want to inject this iString localizer. I install the Microsoft.extensions.localization. You will get the iString localizer. You will have to specify what the type of your resources are, the resource files, and then with this localizer you can say, hey, I want to get the localized value for this key right here, the hello world. And then here in my solution explorer I have under resources languages, I have my strings, so that refers back to this type right here. I have the my strings without any language code, so that's the fallback value basically, and I have this .nl one, which is the Dutch language translation. So if we look at the contents for that, I have this hello world key right here with hello world inside of it. That will be the value that will be pulled out through the string localizer. And then for the Dutch one, I have that same key, but now with a different value and depending on my OS setting. So if that's Android, iOS, Windows, Mac OS, it will show the right language in my application. But now a lot of people ask like, hey, oh, that's cool, but maybe, you have your OS set to one language, but inside of the application, you want to have another language. That's definitely something that I do on my phone as well. So that's a very typical scenario. Let's see how to actually implement that. Now, I'm going to show you this in the index.razor. I'm just going to put it all in this page, which is probably typically not what you want. You want to add some kind of settings page where you can do all this. But for now, I'm going to add this in the index page. And you have to figure out how to put that, make that work inside of your own architecture. But I'm sure you can figure that out. Let's get to work here. I'm going to copy and paste some things here from off screen because it is a lot of code to type. But I will walk you through all of it, so don't worry about that. Here we have a mix of some HTML and Razor. So first we have this little title right here, this heading with culture, and then we have this select. So this is just a drop-down combo box kind of thing, right? So this is all HTML except for this little add bind here, because that's how you recognize the Razor syntax, right? With the add sign here. And we're going to bind this to a thing called culture. We'll see that in a second. That will be a C# property that we're going to define in code, and the rest is going to be style, HTML, etc. Until we reach this here, this for each, and this is going to loop through a collection of cultures, so we'll see that again in a second. And for each culture, we're going to specify this option, which is again HTML mostly. So this fills all the options inside of that combo box, right? So that will have all the options, all the languages that we can choose from. And inside of that, we will fill that with like the culture.display name so we can recognize which languages are actually to be selected. Now with that in place, let me again copy the rest of the code here. So this is going to be an add code block, which is something that you can do in Razor. You can also put it in your code behind, or of course you can get all these values from some kind of service that you set up. Again, that's totally up to you in your architecture. Now let's start with the first one here. I have this cultures. So this is like the collection where I get all the options from. These are the options, the languages that are supported in my application. Now, you can, with all kinds of complicated, it was more complicated when I researched this than I actually thought. You can, I think with some reflection and some stuff, pull out like all the resource files that are inside of your project to kind of like automatically detect all the languages in there, which has as kind of a pro that whenever you add a new resource and a new language, it will show up automatically in the list, right? On the other hand, maybe you want to start working on that resource file, but you don't have all the translations complete. complete yet. So you might want to have that manual fine-grained control of what options are there and which are not. In which case you can specify the options here manually. This kind of has my preference. This, gives you that control of the languages that you want to support and have to show up. But, if you want to do things differently, as long as you can provide a list of culture infos, this will work just fine. Here I have two options. I have ENUS, which is kind of like my fallback, right? Because this doesn't have my strings doesn't have a language code here. So that's English, in my case, can be a different language for you if that's what you want. And I have the Dutch one, which is NL, because it has the NL language code right here. So we got that set up. This is here for the for each. It's going to loop through that. And then we have this culture, right? So this is our property that we have set up, and this is bind here to this thing. And because of this razor syntax and this select, it will automatically detect if we set this culture. It will automatically also set the right option. So it will select the right option for us in the HTML as well. So that's kind of like the power of the data binding right here that you can see. So we don't have to worry about all of that. Now, it's a property, so we have a get and a set. The get is pretty easy. It will just go to our culture info, which is a static class inside of the .NET framework, and it will get the current culture. That's the one that we're going to set as well, and it will fill that in. So that will just be the one that we're going to show here. Now for the set, it's a bit differently because we're going to first see if our current culture is not the value. So value is a keyword in C# that is the value that is coming in. So whenever we're setting the culture, it will be assigned to this value first. We're going to see if it's different, else we don't have anything to do. But if it is different, then we're going to set these four things. So inside of the current main thread, we need to set the current culture and the current UI culture. And also in the current culture, we need to set the default thread current culture and default thread current UI culture as well. But to be very complete, I'm setting all these things because it's cross-platform, and for iOS and Android and Windows and macOS, it varies to which of these cultures it's looking at. So I've just set all of these to be sure that I have it all. It might be if you're doing one platform, not all of these are necessary, but go check out the documentation for that. So this should make sure that we set actually the culture and that our language will actually switch. So let me just run the Windows application right now, and we should see that Dropbox show up, and we should be able to select the languages right here, which is pretty nice. So our application is coming up, and here we are. We have a culture. For some reason, it doesn't select the right one right now, so that's a shame. It should work, but there's some bugs to fix. Maybe it's a nice exercise for you at home. And here we have English and Dutch, so that's really cool. You can see it's English right now, and whenever I switch to Dutch, you can see it automatically switches here. And I didn't show you in this, but in the previous video, I also implemented a little dialogue here, and you can see that this is Dutch as well. So that is nice, and whenever I switch back to English, you can see it goes back to English, and it shows hello world, and this shows, switches back to English as well. So that is really nice. But now let me set it to Dutch, and let's keep it there. And I'm going to close and reopen the application. And what is going on here is that we're going to see that this setting is not persisted. So that's not great, right? That's not a great UX. That's not a great user experience. You want to have, if the user sets a value, that it actually shows up in your application each time that you start it, right? I don't want to set the language all the time. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're really lucky, at least in .NET MAUI side of things, that we have .NET MAUI Essentials. I have a lot of videos on .NET MAUI Essentials, well, Xamarin Essentials, but all the APIs are exactly the same. Have a look at the playlist that's popping up on your screen right now or down in the video description below, and one of which is the .NET MAUI Essentials preferences. So we can just use the preferences to actually save this value and make sure that we apply that each time that the application starts, so that this is persistent across sessions as well. So let's just set preferences. I can just do preferences. It should be in here. And I can do all these things, right? I can do clear, contains key, get, set. In this case, we're interested in set, so I'm going to set. And you can just come up with any key that you'd like. I'm going to set this to language. And then the value is going to be, well, it has a lot of overrides, right? You can set a bool, a date time, basically all kind of like the basic types. You shouldn't put too much complex things in here. But we can just set the string here, right? So we can just say value dot name. The name, I think, is like the NL and the ENUS one. And you can see here, we're instantiating this culture info with that same name. So we can repeat that process, right? So all we need is this value.name, and then we can get a culture info from that and actually set that to all of this, all of these things here. And that way we have persisted our language setting. So now I'm setting the language whenever we set it here in our UI, and then in our app.xaml.cs, which is kind of like the entry point of our application. So you want to do this somewhere early on, right? Depending on where you start showing some UI that is localized. So a thing that makes sense is this app thing right here. And what we're going to do is actually get the language from here. So let me just get the language is preferences dot get. So now I'm getting this key out, and you have to make sure that this is the same one, right? So language, this has to be the same one as your index right here. So make sure that you get that right. And you can also specify, so you can leave it like this, and I think it might give you a null. Oh, actually you have to specify a default value. Okay, so you can specify a default value, so you can set it to an empty string if that's what you want, or you can set it to ENUS, which is then your default language. And then you have to take into account, like, hey, if something is a empty string or the ENUS one, I'm going to do something different, right? That's dependent on your situation, basically. But I'm setting it to ENUS so that it will go to the fallback one. And what you can then do is get that culture. So for our culture is culture info. Does it know that? It does. Oh, it adds the using for me automatically. That's great. And actually, I want to make this a new culture info. I want to instantiate a new one, and I'm going to set language, right? So because we set this kind of like default value, we know it always will have ENUS if nothing is saved yet. So it will always have a valid value here. So now I have this culture, and then I can do kind of like get all of these right here, and I want to set all of these. So let me just do this, and instead of value, I now want to do this culture. So now I set all of these things again, and suddenly I have this persistent thing going on. So if I run this again, it isn't saved, right? So it's going to look into the preference right now, the .NET MAUI Essentials preferences. It will not find anything, so it will come back with ENUS. So that's great. It's going to show like nothing different than before, basically. And actually, oh no, I got caught. I did save this, of course, first. Well, I ran this first. I created the sample first, and now it's set to Dutch because I still had the preferences and I didn't clear them out. So I had it set to Dutch, and now that I reinstated this code, now it suddenly is here again. But so don't get confused by that. That's because the preferences were saved because I didn't uninstall the application. But if I now switch this back to English, so it goes back to English, I close it and I rerun it again, it should still be English. And when I repeat the process to Dutch again, you will see that it will still be Dutch. Because it now also saves it to the preferences, gets it out there whenever the application is loaded, and then we have this persistence working. So you can see that happening here. And that's how to dynamically, inside of your app, make it possible to switch languages, localize your application, and even persist it across sessions. Now, while the localization itself should work across .NET MAUI Blazor and also regular Blazor apps, I think for regular Blazor apps, you will have to do some JavaScript interop for this. So let me know if you want to know how to work with this also for a regular Blazor app. I will make another follow-up video for that, but now at least you know how to dynamically localize your .NET MAUI Blazor app. So thank you so much for watching again one of my videos. I have to do a quick shout out to Denis Kovalenko, who is the latest senior member on my channel. So thank you so much for that. If you want to know what the memberships on my channel are all about, please click that join button down below and you will get some more information on that. If you like this video, please click the like button so it will get shared to more people's feeds and they will know how to localize your .NET MAUI Blazor application as well. If you want to have me show up on your feed automatically, I mean, what's not to like? Please click that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And maybe you want to know more about .NET MAUI, .NET MAUI Blazor, please check out this playlist right here. And if you didn't watch the previous video on localization, but you're now curious what it's all about, please check out this video right here. And maybe you want to double check if you really subscribed, check the button right here. See you next time.